everyone, and welcome to this Tortoise NextGen Thinking. I am Claudia, a reporter at Tortoise. I want to congratulate whoever chose that music. That was excellent music to start this conversation with. I will start this properly in a second by just going through a couple of details about how these events work, what we're going to be talking about, that kind of thing. But before I do that, I would just like to introduce our guest for today, Sam Renke, who I'm sure you all know her work already, but for anyone who doesn't, Sam is a broadcaster, an actor, a disability rights campaigner. She is also a columnist for Metro. She's written for HuffPost, and you might have seen her on the very successful and very witty Maltesers adverts. Sam is also an ambassador for Scope, the disability equality charity, and a patron of Head2Head Theatre. And she was named in the Shaw Trust's Power 100 lists last year, the year before. She's been nominated for numerous awards and has basically been very busy and done lots of very amazing things. So I'm really excited to get chatting to her. A couple of bits of housekeeping before we do. I'm sure all of you know all of this kind of stuff already. I'm sure you've been on thousands of Zoom calls by now, but just to tell you a little bit about us and how this is going to work, we are Tortoise. We're a slow news organisation, which means that rather than doing lots and lots of breaking news, we kind of interrogate the forces driving the news, and we do long form investigative journalism. And these thinkings, these events that we hold, they're kind of the heart of our journalism. They're the engine of our journalism. And the most important thing for us is listening to people. We spend a lot of time listening to people's experiences, listening to their stories, particularly people who are quite often ignored by mainstream media or feel underrepresented. And at the moment, especially, we think that young people are missing from a lot of conversations. So that's why we're hosting these next gen thinkings, particularly for young people, for students, for people who are still in education. And kind of the crucial thing for us of this whole thing is that we really want you to get involved. We really want to hear from you. So ideally, I won't be talking very much at all. You'll be hearing from Sam and you guys will be getting involved. And the best way to do that, there's two different ways. The first is that you can comment in the chat, and I can see that Ellie is already in there. So Ellie is one of our very brilliant student ambassadors. So she's going to be in there editing the chat, and she can help you if you've got any issues with any of the tech side of things. You can talk in there. So, you know, would love to hear from you in there. But the other way is that you can raise your hand, your digital hand, not your real life hand, and go on participants, choose raise hand. I will know that you want to get involved and we will come to you. And ideally, we would come to you with your video on and you'll have your name there so that we, you know, it's just a bit more friendly that way. You know, if you've not got your video on, that's fine. You can also contribute, but it would be great to be able to see you. And I kind of think that's all the housekeeping that I need to go through. I'm sure someone will remind me if I've forgotten something, but I should say that we are recording this conversation and we might share the best bits of it with people who aren't able to be here. We might share a couple of bits on social media. But yeah, I think let's get going. Hey, Sam, thank you very much for joining us. How are you?
I'm not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, I am all right. I am all right, thank you. So I know that we have kind of done a little introduction to you then. I did a very brief overview of your career, but I was wondering if we could start, and I should say, of course, that we're here to kind of talk about breaking down stereotypes, and we're going to talk about acting, but we're also going to talk about, you know, the media industry as a whole, because you've got such a varied career and you've got so much kind of experience of broadcasting and presenting and that kind of thing as well. So it's not just going to be acting that we're going to be talking about today. But I was wondering if you could kind of tell us a little bit more about yourself and your work and kind of how you got into acting, because I think I'm right in saying that you're a teacher first, right? So you didn't go straight into acting. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of how you got started?
Cool. So I think what we call it nowadays is I live a portfolio lifestyle, which is a really pompous way of saying that you've got lots of fingers in different pies. So I normally say that I'm a bit of a Del boy.
Del boy is good. Multi-hyphenate career is one that I also hear, but I think Del boy is yeah.
Del boy. But I think, you know, if you're a creative, particularly now, you know, we're in a lockdown, and a lot of my friends who are solely actors or solely musicians are really, really struggling. So I feel very fortunate because I've actually increased my workload during lockdown, which has been, I feel like a very privileged in that respect. And it has been because I've definitely, just said yes to lots of different avenues. And I think that just goes with the kind of person I am. I wouldn't say I get bored very easily, but I like to challenge myself. And I think that's probably why I, left the teaching world. So I'm currently living in Shoreditch in central London, but I am from Lancashire. You might be able to tell from my accent. I'm actually German, so I was born in Germany. So I'm a little bit of a mixture of everything, which is not a bad thing. But yeah, so I went to university. I studied French, German, sociology, and European studies, and then I had a really big spinal operation, like just before the end of my final year. I was really quite sick, and then I kind of like finished my degree, and I was like, oh my god, what do I do? I'm not ready for the world. I wasn't living independently. I had quite a codependent relationship with my mother. I was pretty much, a 23-year-old, but hadn't really explored my own identity and what I wanted to do, or have even the confidence, to live independently or to travel independently. So, someone said to me, why don't you do a PGCE and you get £9,000? You can, it's only for a year, and then you'll become a language teacher. And I kind of was like, yes, this sounds amazing. I was a little bit shocked by how intense a PGCE was.
Yeah.
It was like really, really intense. I mean, I've never quit anything in my life, but I came very close on a number of occasions. So I went into teaching, and I mean, I really liked it. But what I found was there was a lot of discrimination within the teaching world with regards to treating me as a lesser person, or, we often, disabled people are often infantilized by non-disabled people with regards to, we're not seen as adults. We're not seen as, equals in many respects. And I'll give you an example. So the other teachers to my colleagues would never refer to me as Miss Renke. They would always say Sam. So the kids straight away picked up on my name, so just little, very small microaggressions would chip away. And I wasn't really happy. And I stayed in that environment much longer. It was very toxic for me. I stayed in it much longer than I wanted to, because of the positive stigma it has. People constantly underestimated me as someone with a disability. And as soon as I said I was a high school teacher and I spoke several languages, their whole demeanor, their attitude, their, even like crouching down, they would go from crouching to standing up straight, or even the tone of their voice would alter as soon as they realized that I was, not less intelligent or capable of kind of achieving and having aspirations. And I kind of liked that. I like being able to shut people down. But, there's only so much that you can do in life where you do it for other people. And, one day, it wasn't just that. There was a number of things. I just wasn't happy. I came from a very small town, and I really wanted just to see the world. And I basically quit my job, moved to London. I didn't even view the flat that I was moving to. I knew one person, and I didn't have a job to go to, but I just thought, sod it, and I moved. And
that's a big decision in one go. All of those different things.
I had to sit my mum down and tell her, and she said, "Oh my God!" I sat her down, and she said, "Oh my God, please don't tell me you're pregnant." I went, "No, even better, I'm moving to London." So but that was, for us, that was a big thing, because we did have this very unhealthy relationship. And the irony is, like, our friendship and our, mother-daughter bond has never been stronger. And also, she's got a daughter in central London who wouldn't love that. But I came to London, and I was very naive in many respects. I shared a semi-adapted apartment with 2 other wheelchair users. I was supposed to share with somebody, and then they turned around and said they didn't want to share with me. So I actually lived for 6 months in an open plan kitchen living room. So people were just coming in and out whenever, and there was my bed. So that was like, hardcore. But I was determined. I was here. I quit everything. I gave up a lot, and I was like, "Sod you! I'm gonna succeed." So there was lots of hurdles, and in my mind, I thought it's the capital. Like everywhere's got to be accessible. I can be here for a few months, and I'll go and get my own apartment, and it'll be completely adapted. It'll be fine. And that obviously didn't happen, because homes in London really are far from adapted, and that's one of the campaigns that I work with. I do a lot of work in Parliament to promote accessible homes. But anyway, I became quite depressed. Everyone back home wanted me to come home. Everyone kind of wanted me to. I felt like they wanted me to fail, and I started partying quite a lot, probably too much, and I was becoming a bit jaded because I would go to interviews. I actually volunteered at Action for Children. I kind of actually moved because I wanted to go into the charity sector. It wasn't because of acting at all. I was a trustee for the Brittle Bone Society, and I was like, oh my God, this is great. I love doing this charity work, but it'd be nice if I got paid for it. So I volunteered at Action for Children. I was applying for jobs, and I was just getting rejection after rejection. But even just things like I would turn up to places and they didn't have wheelchair access, or during the interview, I get a lot of questions like, so would we have to put a lift in, or would we have to do this? And I was like, you're already seeing me as someone that's going to cost you a lot of money or a bit of a burden. And I was just really not getting anywhere. And then the one friend that I had invited me to a housewarming party of his friends. And it was really funny because they lived on the 5th floor, and they called and said, our lift is broken. So we started to make other plans. And then right at the last minute, they said, oh, the lift, it's working. So we're like, okay, should we go? It's kind of late. Should we go? So we went. And thank God, because the host of the party, Max Barber, who is now my business partner, we have a production company together, Born This Way Media. He was there. Obviously, it's his house. And he was just fascinated by me. And it was, there was like literally, I was the only woman there. There was 40 gay men. Most of them worked in television. I'm not allowed to say who. A lot of quite high profile people. And what stayed at the party, what happened at the party stayed. But yeah, I just got talking to Max, and I think for him, I was the first disabled person, that he's ever met, so to speak, or we thought, maybe ever met. And I think he just said, do people underestimate you because of your disability? Does that mean you get away with blue murder? And me being a good girl, and I was like, well, in theory, yes, but I would obviously never abuse that power. Although when I was like 5 or 6, when people used to think I was cute and kind of, side head, like, oh, what a shame, I used to get a lot of sweets and chocolates and things for free. So I kind of worked my disability and that sympathy when I was very young, but not so much in adult life. And then he said, oh, I'd love to, do a project. So he invited me for an audition. And the audition was, he had this briefcase with money and props, fake drugs. I promise they were fake drugs. I've actually learned a lot about props. Anyway, like bags of drugs and vitamin tablets for pills and things like that. And he said, so I'm the drug dealer and I have to leave the room for a call. Like the camera was running, what would you do? And I just grabbed everything, started shoving it in my bra and shoving it down my knickers. And it was just so comical because I was this cute little girl in a wheelchair and I just fleeced this old has-been drug dealer. And we kind of thought we've got something here. So we went away and we came up with this concept loosely based on my life. I swear I don't like steal drugs. or sell them. But it was based on this whole thing of, getting away from small town mentality and being free, and people taking advantage or underestimating me, and me not taking it anymore. And the film was called Little Devil. It was supposed to be a short, but then we got my co-star Diobia Operai, who's way more famous than me. He got involved, and he played an escort, and I basically call him up, and he's a gay escort. I call him up, and we become friends instead of anything else, and we form this lovely friendship. And it was just, a really nice comedy. And I don't know, it gave me like taste of acting. I used to do acting a lot of it as a teenager. And then my teacher turned around and said, I'm 34 now. So when she said this, it was probably true. It still is true very much today. Like she said, like people like you or people from what we now describe as BAME won't get anywhere. And that really destroyed me. I think if you tell any 15-year-olds that they're not going to have a chance, I think it takes a lot of courage and, kind of self-confidence for them to not to go against that. So I kind of, didn't think anything of it. But we submitted to film festivals, and we submitted to the LA Diversity Film Festival. And really funny, we didn't think anything of it. And then I was out with my friends. Isn't it funny you remember? Out with my friends in Mayfair, and I said, "Oh my God, they're going to be, publishing who wins." And he said, "Oh my God, can you imagine if you win Best Actress?" I was like, "Yeah." And then I got an email through going, "You've won Best Actress at the LA."
You're just there out with your friends on a normal night, not even.
And the film won Best Film in Diversity of the Arts. And I think everything kind of spiraled from there. I got an agent, and things picked up. But I, simultaneously, I was volunteering for Scope as well, which is a pan disability charity. And they inadvertently gave me kind of media training. So the celebrity liaison officer was fantastic. I'm still friends with her now. And, so if they needed a report, someone to speak on Sky News, they'd send me. And I'm very much like, a fake it till you make it, just say yes to everything and then figure out when you're there. So they built up my confidence because, in the first few years I was doing radio, TV on their behalf, very, very regularly. And that just, that was invaluable. I don't, none of my degrees are kind of related to anything I do now. I mean, I suppose that's not true because teaching, the skills I learned as a teacher are very invaluable and are completely transferred with, particularly now when
as separate careers, teaching and media and acting do have a level of transferable skills between them, don't they? There's the kind of part of it must be the confidence of getting up in front of people and kind of holding a room.
Yeah, I was a language teacher, so I had to, and I studied at St. Martin's up north, so we had a 100% target language. So basically, I was not allowed to speak one word of English to my children. So that would mean that I have to be very theatrical and very, because I do British Sign Language. I even incorporated BSL into some of my lessons. So yeah, definitely, I do motivational talks now. I do keynote addresses, and I think, if you can handle a room full of hormonal year 9 boys, then
you can take on the world.
You can literally stand up in front of thousands of people at a very, prestige conference.
And so
that was very long-winded, wasn't it?
No, it's so interesting. And I think particularly interesting that it seems like you kind of you entered the industry on your own terms. So you created something and that's how you got your foot in the door, and you kind of got yourself involved in that way rather than kind of setting out and thinking getting an agent first, if that makes sense. You've kind of mentioned this already, but this idea that you have so many different careers, you do so many things as well as acting. And I guess, was that something that happened organically for you, or did you kind of set out to have that variety of different careers?
I suppose that's a combination of both. I think it's a survival. Being disabled costs a lot of money. You've got, it's called the disability price tag, and on average, someone with a disability spends £583 extra just on being disabled. So how would that look? I broke my front wheel the other day, and it cost £70 just for a little wheel. My power wheelchair is £9,000. This chair I'm in at the moment is £4,500. If I have a fracture, because I've got brittle bones, that can happen quite sporadically. If I've got a fracture, then because I live on my own, would I have to get a cleaner in? Will I have to get more hours of a PA? And all these things cost money. So for me, it was a part of, first of all, I've got expensive taste. Says the girl that's got 2 Sphinx cats that cost more than a month's salary. But there was that, and just because we don't talk about it, but people with disabilities, like I said, it costs more, and that we've got so much to think about. We've struggled a lot with austerity over the past few years, with governments coming in and changing disability living allowance to PIP, which means you have to prove that you're disabled even more. It's scary times. Like I know we're on here to talk about the positives, but it's actually quite scary and quite daunting having a disability. So there was that at the back of my mind, and also I thrive on new challenges.
Right.
Thrive pushing myself. I don't know why. It's a strange one. I'm a complex person. I'm a really big worrier. Like when I was a child, I used to worry to a point where I'd make myself sick. Have night terrors.
Yeah.
And be quite emotional when I was younger, like everything, and I'm definitely someone who cares too much what other people think. And even now in my career, I struggle a lot with imposter syndrome. So which is quite common in women, which, basically I sit there and go, why am I here? I don't deserve to be here. So it's really funny that goes on internally with me, like constantly. But yeah, I'm like, yeah, do you want me to ride a horse? Yeah, I can't ride a horse, but I'll give it a go, or yeah, you want me to present a show? That's fine. I've no training, but I'll, give it a go. So so I think it's a combination of everything. And I think in today's world, you have to be multifaceted in what you do, particularly if you are creative. Again, like I said right at the beginning, I really, really feel for some of my friends who have literally just said, I just want to do acting. And it's a difficult one, because maybe my fire's gone out of acting a little bit now, just because of the amount of barriers that have been put in my way. But it's that whole thing of, for me, and the pandemic has shown, I think you really do need to have a safeguard. And it's the worst thing you can say to an actor is, well, what's your fallback plan? And I understand that can be quite patronizing to say that, but if you have a disability, you can't afford not to have some sort of backup plan, because like for me, if I were to fracture an arm, that means I wouldn't be able to go and do the work that if I was working on a film or something. So there's a lot that you need to think about when you've got the disability thrown in, I suppose.
And you just mentioned that you felt like there were barriers in your way. I wonder if, I know that we've spoken about this just before, but if you could, for the people in the room, just expand a little bit on what that was like, and kind of what it was that you found to be kind of like blockages for you.
I think when I first started, so I've been in London nearly 9 years, February it'll be 9 years. So the first few years of me going into the world of acting, it was definitely stereotypical roles. So it'd be Catherine, wheelchair user, unlucky in love, suicidal, doesn't have a boyfriend, lives at home with the parents. Just things that I looked at. I thought, what? I don't feel comfortable playing these. And
I don't recognize this character. This is just a stereotype rather than a 3-dimensional.
Yeah, and then you'd always get kind of mediocre, kind of never the protagonist, never the leading lady, never the doctor, the nurse, the teacher, the lawyer. It was always secretary or best friend next door, and again, that for me, that just kind of perpetuated a very negative narrative of disability. So I was never, I suppose, I was never really passionate, and it's that whole thing of, well, a role's a role, and I get that. But for me, as a campaigner, as someone who feels like I need to be a role model, I need to lead by example. So I just became a bit disenchanted with the attitudes and casting. Was just very, I mean, some of the language that was being used, some of the ignorance was just draining.
Yeah.
Then there was, tokenism. I would go places and I genuinely felt like there was not a chance in hell that I would get the role. They just simply had to tick a box and invite a couple of wheelchair users, and that was annoying because for me, I can't get on public transport. So I have to take taxis if I go anywhere independently. And that, that was paying a premium. So for me, even going through an audition that would take 15 minutes and my chances of, getting that, I could fork out 60 to 80 pounds in a round trip in a taxi. And if that's your only, if you're only doing acting and you don't have much income, that's a lot of money. And then also just the lack of auditions. I think this is where maybe I lost my confidence a little bit. And I'm not saying that non-disabled actors don't, I'm not saying they get auditions, constantly flying at them. But for me, it would be months and months and months, and then I'd maybe get an audition. And it's like anything, I am a language teacher. If you don't use it, you lose it. And I definitely felt like I was losing my confidence. I was proactive. I got an acting coach, but again, that costs money. And I felt like I needed to do something. And that's how I became more involved with campaigning because, I identified the injustice of the acting world. Like even the snobbery around if you hadn't gone to RADA or you hadn't gone to an acting school. But the fact is, acting schools like that aren't wheelchair accessible or aren't accessible. I don't know what they're like now, but definitely, when I was growing up, they wouldn't have been an option for me. So it's this kind of cycle, and then you'd get casting agent, you go, oh, I just don't know, there aren't any actors, I just don't know where to find them. Again, this very lazy attitude, like, oh, I can't be bothered to look for disabled talent. We still have it now. I'm working with the BFI on a campaign called Press Reset, which, is highlighting the fact that don't let the pandemic undo all the hard work over the past 10 years, which has slowly seen an improvement of, increased representation. They kind of gave me an option in the form of if the auditions were too far away and I couldn't justify spending that money, or I didn't have my PA, because a lot of these buildings were inaccessible. You'd ring up beforehand, my agent would ring up and go, are you sure it's wheelchair accessible? And I'd be like, yeah, totally. And then you get there and there's like a step or no accessible bathroom. And it's like, that's not accessible, I can't fly. So they said, you can self-tape. Well, for me, self-tape is a little bit of like positive like discrimination in a way, because it's great that it's like, okay, we've given you a solution. But for me, physically being able to say self-tape is difficult. You've got to have like a blank wall behind you. You've got to set up a tripod. You've got to set up all this. And if you've got mobility issues, that might be really difficult. I can't be moving furniture around my house to set up cameras and do all sorts of things. Physically, it's quite tricky. And also, I feel like I am, my personality is what makes me shine. And maybe that isn't allowed to come across as much when you're just submitting a tape. You don't get that repertoire with the casting. And I think that is very true because, the Maltesers, as you mentioned, that was one of my big, TV roles. That was, I went into the studio, and I remember they didn't have an accessible bathroom, and I was there for maybe 6 hours in total for the audition, because they didn't have some extras, so they actually got me in to read for all the roles, and I kind of said yes because I wanted to make a good impression. But even that, having to go for a massive interview, it is an interview, and then having to like cross your legs the entire time and smile and be happy, it's hard work. But I was able to kind of, I suppose, charm people a little bit and show my true self, and to show that I am, going to be good to work with. And I think that's half the battle as well. When you work on a film or whatever you're doing, no matter how, even if it's for a day, people become extremely tight, like the crew, everyone becomes quite tight. And you've got to know that the people you're working with are not only they're good at performing, but they are actually, like nice people to be around.
You want to be able to get along with the people that you're working with, don't you? I think Joe Hughes might have a question that I also want to ask myself, so I'm going to let him do it as possible. So
Hi, Samantha. It's a great discussion, really interesting. I just wanted to ask whether the industry is different now, how much your campaigning and lots of campaigning has kind of returned positive results, and how far you think there is to go.
Yeah, so I mean, I would like to say that it's not just me. There's a lot of amazing campaigners out there that, there has been a change. But if you look for statistics, probably not so much. And there's a lot of hot air. A lot of broadcasters, particularly now, particularly since Black Lives Matter, they're all doing these buzzwords of inclusivity, but doesn't necessarily kind of translate on the screen. And there's 14 million disabled people in the UK. That's 1 in 6, and we are the fastest growing minority. And anyone can be disabled at any time. So if we make up of 22% of the population, which is actually bigger than LGBTQ plus I and BAME. Yet we only still represent, I think, in advertisement, 0.006% of on-screen talent, and with just in general, I think it's under 7%. So there has obviously been positives. I'm very privileged. I get regular work now, but in comparison, I still, there's shows, and I'm gonna kind of like, I don't care if I piss everyone off, but there's shows I was looking this morning, like watching this morning, this morning, Lorraine, they never have a correspondent, anyone on with a disability. These are prime time, programs, and it's like, why? Why don't you have disabled talent? And someone said to me, like, disabled people, like, your time's not ready because you're not cool enough yet. You're not, because like when you look at diversity, it goes in phases. You know what I mean? Like a few years ago, it was trans rights, and now it's Black Lives Matter. And it's like that's not how inclusion and diversity should work. All marginalized groups should support one another and get a place at the table. So yes, I've definitely seen an increase, but it's still quite a slow increase. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And it's a shame because there are people out there who are extremely talented. But these negative stereotypes of disability, I suppose, are just blocking people. It's as though that we won't be capable of doing it, or we're going to cost more money if we get involved. And the thing is, if we didn't have systemic ableism, so if we didn't have barriers, daily barriers, then maybe it wouldn't be so difficult to get more people like myself involved in acting or TV work. But yeah, I think society as a whole just needs to value disabled people. And I've been talking a lot about targeted universalism. So that basically means that policies that are made on a universal level often don't account for marginalized groups. So targeted universalism actually identifies that policies should be made on a universal level. Like everyone should be, everyone should be aiming for all these policies. They should affect everyone, but you still need to identify those who are marginalized. So an example would be, drop curbs in a street not only benefits someone like myself, but children, parents with pushchairs, or the elderly, or shops that are, loading and offloading lots of produce. So I think we need to, as a society, just start thinking that on these levels and valuing everybody, and not just. I mean, it's difficult because we're seeing it right now with COVID. The elderly and people like me who are vulnerable have very much been kicked to the curb. Because I think what went wrong there is, the government identified us as vulnerable, and I think once you call someone or label someone vulnerable, then they're kind of not even worth saving or seen as someone that's contributing towards society. So it's sorry, that got really deep, didn't it? But I think there's only so much campaigning that I can do because actually the foundations are crap. So until the foundations are a little bit better, then we'll see a real change. But that doesn't mean I'm disheartened and I'm going to stop doing what I'm doing, because if I get a lot of messages from young disabled people saying that I've helped them go into acting, or given them a little bit of confidence. So that's enough for me, to be fair.
No, also I should say that deep is where we want this to go, if people are comfortable with that. So thank you so much for that answer. I think Tanishq and Emma also have questions. So if we could go to Tanishq next, sorry, that'd be great. Hey.
Hello, you okay?
Hey, it's been great listening to you and hearing you talk. It's been really inspiring. And also, I just wanted to ask something almost like a follow-up to Joe's question, but like with regards to, you've really been on the field trying to campaign and inspire young people who might be disabled and not traditionally in the acting field to actually go out there. But when do you think like a proper full-length feature film featuring disabled actors on the forefront as the protagonists, not just as supporting characters, would probably hit the screen so that we can watch it and it'll actually be marketed and advertised as a normal feature film is with
that's a good question. I mean, there are, I mean, I'm not saying there aren't any, like Little Devil obviously is one. I know that there's a lot of like Years and Years featured the lovely Ruth Medley. So there are things out there that feature people with disabilities. The problem we have at the moment is this term that we call cripping up. So cripping up. So I just want to just to explain the word crip. So the word obviously cripple. It's one of them words where it's not a nice word. It shouldn't be used, but a lot of people within the disability community have actually reclaimed it and call one another crips. I personally, I'm big on language. I just think if language is offensive, it shouldn't be used. It shouldn't be reclaimed. But the term is cripping up, and that is using non-disabled actors to play disabled roles, and that is still happening. I think a film came out earlier this year. Oh goodness me, I can't for the life of me remember what it was called. But this is the battle that we're having right now, and I think the argument is, if you're acting, then you should be able to act whatever. Anyone should be able to go up for the role and have that competition. If you're got an Irish accent, you should be able to play someone with an American accent, and I totally believe that. That's the joy of acting. But I think the difference here is, and why there aren't so many films out there or kind of series out there which highlight disabled people as the main protagonists, so to speak, is because we aren't in a level playing field. As for all the things that I explained to you earlier, I don't mind being in an audition room with a variety of people, disabled, non-disabled, going for a disabled role. But the thing is, it doesn't happen that much for disabled people. There's not as much opportunity. So then when you start giving them the opportunity to non-disabled people, and then you add all these prejudice that are these unconscious bias of the casting agents, they are going to go for a non-disabled person because, again, in their head, it's going to be easier to work with. They're not going to get sick. We're not going to have to, stop filming. they're not going to cost us more money because we've got to put ramps in or, you know, do all these requirements that they may have. So until we are on a level playing field, you know, I'm completely against cripping up, and I think also this is why with my production company, you know, I am pushing for more disabled centric kind of shows, and again, it's just to kind of round off your question. When I'm talking to production and broadcasters, when I'm kind of pitching things, they're always, and even when I get offered like presenting jobs now, you know, there's this awkwardness going, oh, so we're going to put you up for this role, but don't worry, it's nothing about disability. And as though that's a compliment. It's like when someone goes, oh, I don't see your disability. It's like, hello, I'm in a bloody wheelchair. Of course you see my disability, and I'm proud of it. Why are you trying to shy away from it? And I think that's where we're at the moment on TV. Of course, I want to, you know, do dispatches and, you know, present things that are just about current affairs. But actually, there's so much that we need to learn about disability that actually it isn't a dirty word, and we need to be talking more about, you know, I want to do a program on disability and sex. I want to do a program on my daily living as a disabled woman, you know. So I think we need to get a balance, and society needs to get over this awkwardness they have around disability. And I don't know, you know, I don't know when that will be, but I'm only 34, so I've got a few years in me yet. Never know, I might win an Oscar one day. We'll see. For something.
Great.
I'm really looking forward to that day, honestly.
Oh, bless you.
I think you might have just in one brilliant answer responded to Emma's question as well. But Emma, do put your hand up or comment in the chat if you did have more that you wanted to say, because I'd love to hear from you as well. But let's go to Rachel Morgan-Jones if we can, who's got their hand up. And I should say that I would love to hear from, we really would love to hear from as many people as possible. So if people do have their own stories, their own experiences of acting, or would just like to contribute, you know, from their own personal experience, please do put your hand up and get involved. Hi, Rachel.
Hi. So I raise awareness on cultural and racial exclusionism. I'm keen to see some of the language in educational frameworks change. And I just wondered if there's any formal language that you think needs to change, and it might not just be in educational frameworks, could be in legislative, whatever. But I think you've actually slightly touched on it already, so it might be difficult to answer.
Yeah, no, I mean, gosh, language is so complex, and actually, I actually wrote about it for the Metro, so definitely head over to my Metro. I wrote about the use of able-bodied as and non-disabled. But I think the main problem with language, particularly in the disability community, is it's actually quite fractured on, and we don't necessarily agree on everything. And I think if we don't agree as, you know, people with disabilities, then it's quite hard to then say to non-disabled people, you know, what you should or shouldn't be saying. However, having said that, there are obviously big no-nos, and I would actually still say, so if you're describing someone who is disabled, I prefer non-disabled. Like you can obviously use the word able-bodied, but that is just for anyone, regardless of their impairment. Why I say non-disabled is because actually it's something called the social model of disability. So it basically says that I'm only disabled by my environment. So I've got an impairment. So my impairment is brittle bones, and you can put me anywhere you want. So you can put me on the moon and I'll still have my impairment. But actually, given my environment, so as I said earlier, you know, having a studio that's fully accessible, step-free access, accessible bathroom, in that environment, I'm not disabled. So in that environment, if you were to say, oh, I'm able-bodied and you're not, it's a bit like, well, actually, I am fully abled. You know, I've got a flat here in central London. I've got automatic windows, automatic doors. I've got a shower room. My kitchen goes up and down on hydraulics. And I'm not disabled in my own home. But as soon as I get out the door and there's no drop curb, then I am. So that's a big one that I'm definitely pushing. You know, I'm not wheelchair bound. You know, I'm a wheelchair user. And with regards to media, this is one of my big bugbears, and I hope I've got time to kind of kind of summarize this, but it's something called inspiration porn. So inspiration porn was coined by a fellow person with Brother Bones, OI, Stella Young. So Stella was in Australia. She sadly passed away a few years ago, but she did an amazing TED talk, which was called "I'm Not Your Inspiration." Definitely go check it out. But she basically said that, you know, kind of disabled people are objectified because we fit into two categories. We're either a burden, miserable gits, or we're inspirational athletes. And, you know, it's fine calling someone inspirational as long as you're not making a comparison to, because I get told a lot, oh, I'd rather die than be like you in a wheelchair. I've been told that on a number of occasions. So when someone says to me, like I've had random people come up to me, not even know me, and go, you inspire me so much. And in their mind, they're thinking, because isn't it amazing that you look nice and you've got makeup on and you're out and you're about? Because if I was like you, I don't think I could cope. So for me, you inspire me to be, because my life is so much better. So I need to be grateful for that. So inspirational porn is a real danger. We see a lot of it in the media. I saw on this morning, a few weeks back, they had a couple, both of them had Down syndrome. And literally the title was, you know, against all the odds, they found each other and they're in love. It's like, what do you mean against all the odds? Because they've got Down syndrome, they would, you know, couldn't have a meaningful relationship, you know? So this inspirational porn, I think Piers Morgan, he's a guilty party. You know, he often, he's had a few people on with disabilities and they've, you know, been successful. And he's kind of made a point of going, if you think your life is hard, you just look at this person. You know, there are these memes where it's, you know, you see an amputee and go, you know, if you think you've got it bad, look what they're achieving. And you've got to understand that people with disabilities, this is my life. You know, I've never known anything else. Like what I do, it's just what I do. You know, I shouldn't be applauded for simply getting up in the morning because I actually really enjoy my life. And having a disability, you know, isn't something that I feel, you know, resentment towards. So I think inspiration porn, I know it's a little bit different from language, but just perpetuating that notion of people with disabilities have, you know, are put on this earth to make others feel happy. And yeah, so that's does that answer your question? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's really helpful, and I totally understand when you say that sometimes people get really confused about what terms to use, and coming from my point of view, when I talk about cultural and racial exclusionism, people are really confused, and then we get members of the public saying, oh, but I'm just petrified because of this political correctness, and that really annoys me too, because I just think, do you know what, tough, let's have some discomfort and have some a discomfort around political correctness, because eventually, maybe in 20 years time, there will be no need for Black History Month or LGBTQ days and so on. So that's kind of my reaction to that. But it's really
yeah, I completely agree with you, and it's a bugbear of mine. It's this whole thing of, you know, there's no place for ignorance anymore, and actually you saying, you know, you being dismissive and saying, oh, you know, I just would rather not because I don't want to be too PC. That's you just saying I'm too lazy to actually educate myself a little bit. You know, and people like disabled people, I'm not asking for a gold unicorn. I'm just asking to be treated like everyone else, you know, to have equality. And again, for me, I know a lot of people in the community, you know, that's the joy of social media. I've rarely come across someone with a disability who would say that I just would rather people not either, if they're going to say something incorrect, I'd rather just not them not socialize with me. You know, I'd rather someone maybe put their foot in it and me say, actually, would you mind just, you know, saying this instead, than being completely ostracized and alienated. You know, but I think what happens is a lot of people let their ego get in the way. You know, people don't like being told you've actually said the wrong thing, or that has made me feel uncomfortable, because they can feel embarrassed, etc. And I think that's what stops progression. So if you leave your ego at the door, and if I say, would you mind, instead of using wheelchair bound, would you mind using wheelchair user? And you not go, oh, how dare they, PC gone mad, like, oh, what's this? I feel very, like, oh, that's really made me uncomfortable. If people just go, do you know what, mate? I've never heard wheelchair user, but from now on, I will. And then that's it. But I guess we've just got a long way of society to kind of really, I think when people ask for equality, those who've always been in a place of privilege feel like somehow their privilege will be taken away, when that's absolute codswallop. Living in an equal society genuinely benefits everybody, but yeah, it's a power struggle, I think.
Totally agree.
Thank you so much, Rachel, and thanks, Sam. And I should say that maybe we can pop the video to Stella Young's TED Talk in the chat, because it's really, really good. And I would advise everyone to watch it if they can. We only have about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to really quickly, if that's right, let's go to Dean and then let's go to Harry, who both have their hands up, and then we'll come back to you, Sam, just to round things off.
Perfect, because this coconut water has gone right through me.
Hi Samantha, I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you, my love.
Just to say, I took part in Head2Head Theatre last year and I really enjoyed it.
I love that. They're great, and they've just had a bursary or some grant come through to help them. I think they were struggling financially to keep operating, during lockdown. And I believe that they've been offered some financial backing, so we're really pleased about that.
Yeah.
So for anyone that doesn't know Head2Head Theatre, I'm patron of. So Sarah, one of the main actors, actually played my mother in Little Devil. That's how we know one another. But Head2Head Theatre do multi-sensory theatre for children with severe neurological conditions, and so they'll get dressed up and they'll have Mad Hatter tea parties, but they'll use makeup on and they'll do it really multi-sensory. So they've gone virtual now. So they're absolutely amazing, and they're only small, but what they give to people is amazing. So sorry, I've cut you off there. What was your question?
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to tell you my experience of Head2Head.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so nice. It's nice to meet.
Yeah. My experience is I found it really good as I'm autistic myself and disabled, and I thought it was really good because it helped me build up my confidence for my acting career in the future.
It's really good, and make sure you keep in contact with them, because I'm sure they'll support you in any way that you.
Okay.
And have you got any plans? What would you like to do next?
I would like to do performing arts, like in the theatre. I'm really good at the playhouse where I live.
That's really good. So they're quite inclusive, and they really,
It's all right, but there's only about 5 autists, 5 disabled at the playhouse, but most of them are normal.
Yes, okay. But I mean, like, I don't know if you're on social media, but definitely keep in contact with me on social media.
Yeah, I will do. I'm following you anyway, so I'll drop you a message.
Yeah, please do. And keep me updated. Okay.
That's
Thank
great.
you very much, Sam.
Thanks, Dean. And we should put a link as well to Head2Head in the chat.
Yeah. That's fantastic.
Can follow it up there. And let's go to Harry. We've got a couple of minutes left, so let's go to Harry.
Hi, Harry.
Hello, I'm really enjoying your story, and I did some volunteer for Head2Head too.
Yay!
And
very popular.
And I really enjoyed that. Currently an ambassador for Orpheus with Richard Stilgo.
Amazing.
And currently we're doing a Jack and the Beans with Savvy Theatre in Croydon.
Oh my goodness, you're
an assistant director. Well, I want to ask, when was the first you heard about Head2Head?
Yeah, so Sarah, she played in the film that I did, Little Devil. She played my very religious, overbearing mother, not like my real mother. So we obviously worked on the film together, and we stayed in contact. And they asked me to be their patron. So I've got a very special place in my heart for them, really. Yeah, and like I said, I love what they do, and I just, for me, it's difficult when you're trying to support such a small charity organization, because it's, particularly now in these times, it's really difficult because I think everybody's really struggling. So that's why I'm really, really, really happy that they've been given some sort of financial support.
Yeah, it's because there's so many. I think it's so many hearing your story, because it's like since lots of shows we've been since we've been resuming back on doing our show in Savvy in Croydon. It's like we were getting to finishing our film, and then
I'm just glad that you're still able to do it, and good luck. When is it going to be out?
It's going to be in January, roughly January.
Okay, perfect. Well, good luck with everything.
And you keep contact with Richard Stilgate and Orpheus.
Fabulous.
Thanks so much, Harry. That's great to know. We've got 2 minutes left, so just to kind of round things up, Sam, I wonder whether, because I guess we've spoken quite a lot about how there have been positive steps that have been made, but there is a way to go in terms of proper inclusion and proper representation that's not tokenistic or problematic in some way. And I wonder if you have any advice for any of the people that are on this call who might think, they might want to be change makers, they might want to challenge the stereotypes that they see, they might want to challenge the kind of barriers that they face or other people that they see face. And I wonder if you've got any advice for them about kind of what you would do or how you would advise them.
Definitely. I think volunteering and affiliating with a charity, particularly a charity that you are genuinely passionate about, I think you need to, you have to actually want to be championing and being a campaigner for that cause. There's no point trying to save the whales if you're not really that bothered about whales. So, charities are a great place to start. And I would also say social media, like, I'm not a YouTuber, I'm so past it now. Like, I downloaded TikTok last night and I was like, who are these people? Self-absorbed, like, individuals. And then I left. I just couldn't do it. But social media can be really, really great, because social media allows you to be you and to show others what you have to offer without any of those restrictions. You don't have to worry about kind of red tape or discrimination or people's negative attitudes of you on your social media. So definitely use that. And even though I said I'm not a YouTuber, use things like YouTube that they are free. And they're just a really great way, particularly to build up a portfolio. Because if you've not got a self-tape, because self-tape can be really difficult. And a lot of the self-tapes are, you've got to do things for free for other people, like student projects, which aren't necessarily a bad thing. But again, if you're struggling to get to these places, then definitely, kind of having your own YouTube channel is the best way of doing that. And just following influencers that inspire you and are doing what you can't, the route that you're wanting to go down. So that would be my tips, I think.
Do you have any kind of campaigners or activists that you would suggest people follow that you think are doing really good work in this area? I personally I follow a woman called Nina Tame, who I think is brilliant. If anyone follows her on Instagram, I think she's great. But I wonder if you've got any that you think.
Gosh,
activists, or not even on social media, just in general, people who you would want to shout out at this point.
Yeah, gosh, put me on the spot now. Adam Pearson's is great. Sophie Morgan's amazing. I'm trying to think who else. I'm really, really bad with names. But you know what you do? You go and follow me and then see who I'm following.
That's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. And we should do that. We should drop your Twitter and your Instagram into the chat as well. We are at 6 o'clock, and that I cannot believe how quickly that hour has gone. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. I was going to try and sum up the conversation, but I actually think it's going to be too difficult to do that because we've covered a lot of ground. But I think that it's hopefully everyone has found it as kind of interesting and as informative as I have. Thank you so much for joining us and spending the past hour with us. I should say that anyone who normally comes to these Next Gen Thinkings, we're not going to have one next week. We've got a Tortoise Cities Summit all day. So do come join us on that. We'll be talking about the future of cities. And I think obviously from our conversation today, accessibility is going to be a huge thing for the future of cities. That has to be what we centre our cities around. They have to be for everyone. So do come and join us for that. And in the Next Gen series, the week after that, we will be with Dr. Jessica Taylor, who is a feminist psychologist, talking about how to fight misogyny. Thank you again to the brilliant Sam Renke, and thank you all for joining us today. It's been really brilliant. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
Enchanté.